All right, we are going live now, gentlemen. Stand by. Just want to make sure that we have data flowing into the YouTube video. All right, look, it's working. Okay, perfect. All right, folks in the chat room, welcome to This Week in Photo. We're about to rock this. So this is going to be a really exciting. I don't know if it's going to be exciting, but it's going to be informative. This is going to be an informative episode. I see there's a bunch of people inside the chat room right now. So go ahead and start interacting in there, and we'll jump into the chat room from time to time and pick questions. And when we get to the question segment, we'll dive in and ask and answer questions that have been asked in there. So we're going to start the show in just a second. These are our three panelists right here on the screen right now, or our two panelists. It's just me and smarter people. So Chris Berry and Troy Miller are in here to tackle this. I have my own opinions on tonight's topic, so and I haven't shared my opinions with you guys. Troy, you're specifically on the show because you're opinionated, and but in a good way.
Nobody would believe that.
Yeah, right. Anybody that hasn't seen your critiques would not believe it. But if you've seen his critiques, yeah, they understand. And Chris Berry, you oscillate. So I wanted to get you on here so I could nail you down.
Yeah.
Like getting you nailed down on this topic is like trying to capture a slippery pig, man.
Yeah, good luck. A fast, slippery pig.
So what I'm gathering is
quarter mile.
So what I'm gathering is, Frederick, that you're going to pick on us. That's what you've decided to do. You're just going to.
Well, no. I'm gonna. My job as host is to stoke the fire, right?
Okay.
Not pick on you. It is to stoke the fire and get it roaring, right?
Fix it out.
Yeah. I dig it.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, that's the ticket. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start this show here. Thanks to everybody in the chat room. I appreciate you guys showing up and all the TWiP PRO members that are representing in there. I see your names popping through. Steven Sharf's in there. Thank you for coming. Good Dog. Who is Good Dog? I don't know who Good Dog is, but welcome. Through the Mind is in there. We got some good people in here. All right, so let's get this thing started. Stand by, quiet on the set. I'm going to record the intro, and then we'll dive into the show. And here we go. Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I am your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about something that might be considered a little controversial, and that's the issue or topic of looks, and specifically in-camera looks and the different looks that different camera manufacturers say or claim that their cameras produce that are unique. So I want to get to the bottom of it in terms of is that uniqueness actual uniqueness? Is it created through some specific magic algorithms, or is it a marketing ploy and you could just go ahead and create these kind of looks in post-production in Lightroom or Capture One or whatever software you're using? So here to help me go through this are my two panelists, Mr. Chris Berry and Mr. Troy Miller. First, let's start with you, Chris. Let's give us a quick introduction. Where are you at? Where are you from? You're normally in the chat room, by the way.
I'm normally in the chat room.
Yes.
I'm gonna multitask, but we'll see how that goes. But I'm in Arizona. I'm doing a little bit more than photography these days, just dabbling into video, but mostly photography, portraits, some travel stuff, some events, and a lot of drone stuff. I got a handful of drones, been flying for about 4, almost 5 years. And I'm just hobbyist, but moving way more into professional photography and delivering to client set.
I love it.
And like what I do.
And you're a Fuji nut too, right? So you are. I mean, that's kind of a negative term. You're not a Fuji nut. You are you are a Fuji enthusiast. You love Fuji. You shoot Fuji. You are lusting after the next big Fuji coming out, and you think that the look that you get out of your Fuji camera is special, right?
It's very special. However, we'll dig into that, I think.
Okay, all right, we're gonna dig into that. All right.
Caveat.
Also on the shows, Mr. Troy Miller. Troy, you've been here many times on This Week in Photo, but not so often on the main show. So welcome to the main show. It's good to have you here. And one of the main reasons, like I was saying before we started recording, that I wanted to get you on the show is because you have really strong opinions and valid opinions on how all this stuff works. And you've been shooting since, what was it? Since dinosaurs roamed the earth or something?
Pretty much, yeah. Back when there was celluloid and silver halide and dark rooms. And
I thought you were mixing your own pigments and painting on the walls of caves.
Yeah, I was doing that. Had a tent with a hole in it. You know that shot of the pyramids that they shot? Yeah, that was me.
That was awesome. Congratulations.
That's where I left my hair.
Well, give us a little background on who Troy Miller is for the folks that may not know who you are.
I am a full-time portrait and wedding photographer. My wife and I have been shooting weddings for 25 years. That's what we do full-time. And we started in film. I shot Hasselblad. So, the manual idea of getting in there and looking at light and knowing it right away, that's always been sort of my background. Recently, for some reason, I've decided to torture myself with planning a photography event, which is F64 Live, which I'm very excited about. Having you come as a keynote is going to be super exciting.
Yep.
So that's been taking up a lot of my time. I have decided that weddings are far easier than planning events, so I'm going to stick to that for the most part.
Yeah, it's like you're planning a big wedding, basically, right?
Yeah, that's easy. That's easy stuff. Planning big events, I like getting all my friends together and doing that, and that's going to be really cool. So yeah, and then because I've been shooting for so long, I've played with lots of gear. I have friends that shoot Canon, that shoot Nikon, that shoot Sony, that shoot whatever. So and they come shoot with me at weddings, so I get all these images in my library together, and I have to edit them together. And I'm like, oh my God, really? I got to edit another one of these files,
Yeah.
So it happened.
I love it. All right, guys. Before we dive into the topics du jour for this episode, Chris, I know I'm looking at the show notes here. You've set up finally new social media presences for yourself. What's going on there? And you're going to Burning Man, and what is happening? You're like the guy we all want to be.
Everything is happening. Two of my kids go back to school tomorrow, so that kind of equates to a little bit more freedom. But yeah, I missed one or two Burning Man, so I'm excited to get back out there because I feel like that's where I fell into my creative zone for photography and what I like to shoot. And yeah, I mean, I'm traveling a lot. I'm going to be going to Photokina, which is huge. I've never been to Europe. So just traveling, shooting more, creating more, still finding out exactly what my particular brand is.
Yeah.
As far as
you should be in Julio Shorio's finding your passion, his little workshop thing that he put together.
Huh? Yeah. I like the journey. It's been fun, and I'm fortunate to be able to, to do all this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. And Troy, what about you, man? Before we jump into the main topics, anything that besides F64 Live, did you want to tell the audience before we dive into the real stuff?
No, you know what? Thanks for being here. I think it's so cool that there's so many people that are anxious and hungry to learn more, and it's so awesome to be part of that. So I love this idea of having been a photographer for so long and then getting a chance to interact with that. So thank you for having me. I'm just super excited to be here. And, it's so cool that here you have Chris, who's really kind of kicking his career off, right?
Yeah.
And then I've been doing it for so long, and we're all here. It's all the same. We're all creating art. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me of, I was thinking about this sitting in the barbershop chair today, actually. I was thinking about, it's kind of like in a barbershop when you go in, and Troy, I don't know if you've been in a barbershop in a while. But
that's for both of us.
I'm just kidding.
I got a video for you. I got hair down to here. I'm shooting on a Hasselblad.
I love it.
I'm rocking the mullet.
Just kidding. We can kid like that. But I was thinking like the barbershop is sort of the egalitarian meeting place, right? It's like everybody that goes into the barbershop sits in the same chair. You get the same bib. You get cut by the same person. Doesn't matter if you're worth $1 million or $1,000. You're getting cut by the same people, and everybody's the same. It's sort of like it's like Switzerland, and that's kind of what photography is and TWiP is. It's kind of like, who cares where you came from? You're here now, and we all have like interests, and we can talk about it as peers rather than this sort of caste structure. So it's fun. It's fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive in, man. I'm excited to talk about this look stuff. So where did this come from? Was it Troy? It was you, right? Wasn't it? I think you are the impetus of this. We were talking about this during one of our TWiP PRO critiques, and the whole idea of our looks, you know, these looks like that you get, like, and specifically I'm picking on Fuji or talking about Fuji, but Fuji and Leica are the two that come to mind. Hasselblad to some degree, but Fuji and Leica, I keep hearing look. You know, it's the Fuji look. Chris, I'm going to throw it to you first, man, because you are, like, you are Fuji. Like, you're the Fuji person. I think between you and Valerie Jardin, you guys are Fuji aficionados to the nth degree. So tell me what it is. First, tell me what it is about the Fuji system that has you so enamored, and what does the Fuji quote look mean to Christopher Berry?
Man, that's a really good question. I've gotten better at kind of quantifying what that Fuji love is, and really, it's
Stockholm
for me.
syndrome.
It's really, it's a combination of how I use the camera to get to the end result, and the way that I like to create just seems to flow a lot easier with not only the device, but the look that I want to get right out of the JPEGs in the camera. I like editing raw images. It's cool. Like, if I want to destroy an image and play around with it and get this and get that out of it, it's great. At the same time, I know how the camera meters. I know, you know, what it looks like in the viewfinder, how close that's going to be to the final image. I like a combination of what my end product is and how close it is to what I see, and what the light looks like in the scene. And I like how my brain wants to manipulate the camera to produce that image. So it's the process of creating with that device that makes the end result that much more beautiful. And I like the fact that what I think I'm seeing when I take a picture is what the camera is also seeing.
But could it be said that everything that you mentioned, because you mentioned a lot of things like the hardware and just, you know, it's the hardware and software nexus, right? That has to mesh with your particular synapses for you to get the job done, right? Yeah. So that works. But then, you know, this look thing, like you're saying, you want to get the shot out of camera, like you want a JPEG that comes out of the camera that looks great and you can just publish it without tweaking it or anything. I want to explore that piece a little bit. Now, what comes out of your camera that is so perfect on the Fuji side? Because when I think of it, when people say look, I go into nerd mode, and I think, you know, everyone has different rods and codes in their eyes. Everyone perceives color differently. So your look may be different than my look. Why? You know, how can you say that there's one look that's awesome? You know.
I'm a moody person, first of all. Like, I can change from 1 minute to the next, and there's a certain tone and vibrance, and there's just a certain vibe from the overall image that I get when I look at I'm not talking about going into the settings and reducing contrast and, you know, boosting shadows or highlights, no, and then, you know, then going in and making an image. I'm like, okay, here's my basis, here's where I'm going to start, and I'm going to shoot this, I'm going to meter it a certain way, I'm going to do this, I'm going to shoot manually, and what I get is just beautiful. Just the color just matches what I think I want to shoot, and it's really and it's clean, it's sharp, it's beautiful. The skin.
That is what I hear, Chris. See, I hear that from Leica shooters, I hear that from Fuji shooters, and that piece, that unquantifiable piece. I even a couple years ago, I interviewed Leica people, and I asked them specifically about the Leica Look. I think it was a Doug Case show, I forget, but I think we titled it Leica or Leave It or something like that. It was around the expense of Leica cameras and is it worth it and all that. But they couldn't quantify it either. And in my head, I'm thinking, like where I was saying in jest a little bit, like, is it Stockholm syndrome? Like when you buy into the system and you've got 20 grand, 10 grand in this system, does your brain form the look? Troy, I throw it to you. I mean, could it be psychological, the Fuji and Leica look, or is it real?
You know, it's a little bit real. Granted, because
you can't be a little bit real. That's like being a little bit pregnant.
It is. No, because well, if you're confused, it's like this. It's like if you go and you shoot, because I've done a lot of weddings where I've had Canon shooters and I shoot Nikon side by side. You bring those images in, same light, same exposure settings, same bride, same thing. And Canon images tend to come across a little bit softer and a little bit more magenta, slightly, only slightly, until you pass them through Lightroom, and then all those preferences basically default to zero, mostly zero, right? So the styles and that vibrancy you see on the back of your camera, some engineer decided, oh, we're going to boost the greens, we're going to boost the blues, we're going to boost the reds. That's totally fine, though. But when you take that into Lightroom or Capture One or Luminar or whatever you take it into, all that stuff basically goes away, and now you're trying to push it back to where maybe you saw it in the camera. So I tend to think that it's kind of like if you sat in my truck and tried to drive my truck, you'd be like, dude, this is weird. Your seat's in the wrong place. And yeah, this is like, what the heck? You have so much horsepower. You're awesome. But because you're not used to my truck, right? It doesn't make them one better than another. Weird analogy, I know, but I think that's it. You put my Nikon in my hand, that thing is like a lightsaber. I can do anything with that. You hand me that Fuji that Chris loves so much, I don't inherit that connection. Yeah. So there is something to that, and I think it's really important that in all of this discussion that we realize that it's less about the tool, it's more about the hand that's wielding the tool, right? And I think that it's cool to be geeky about all the stuff, but ultimately you have to create something with what you're given. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, you hit on one thing, and I want to have you both address this. So when you're shooting in RAW, and Chris, you were talking about this a little bit. When you're shooting in RAW, basically you're recording zeros and ones, you know, at whatever optical settings that you have your camera set at, f-stop, shutter speed, ISO, blah blah blah. It's recording that raw quote data, right? And then when your camera generates a JPEG, you know, either for the LCD on the back of the camera or a JPEG on the memory card, those engineers, Troy, that you were talking about, take those zeros and ones and apply this formula to it to come out with that look. So, and I'll throw this to you first, Chris. So that said, if you are giving your camera a bucket of raw ingredients that is the same, then, you know, and then the engineers are applying their formula or their recipe to those raw ingredients, what's to say that I can't replicate that formula or that recipe in Lightroom or Capture One or Luminar or whatever?
I totally think you can.
Oh, that's not what I wanted to hear. I want to hear an argument.
and to be honest with you,
I'm trying to be controversial here, bro.
Yeah. This time I'm no help. No, but
you can reproduce it mostly.
A little bit further back. I mean, okay, so you have a a more randomized color pattern that Fuji has on their X-Trans, you know, sensor, which is just an overlay on top of a Sony sensor. I mean, let's just be real, you know.
Yeah.
And even what Fuji thinks color is, and the amount of color for this tone, or you know how the transition is going to be here, or how the tones are going to be there, and this is how much red is in this red, or you know, even that is what comprises their raw file. And the confusing thing I've found about Fuji in the past is, you know, when I first used to put raw files from, you know, my X Pro 1 and XT2 into an editing software, it wouldn't know what to do with it. You know, so now there is, you know, use Iridium for Fuji raw files because you'll get more sharpness, or use Lightroom because everyone has their preference for their raw converter because what that program does to that particular file is different than the next program that'll do something to that particular file. You know, so when I want to match that, I'll use another camera. You know, but yeah, I mean, shoot, yeah, I think you can. I think you can take a file, pick the software that you want, and spend as much time as you think you need to, and you know, to spend on that file until you get the look that you're satisfied with. Because with all these companies that are selling presets and all these creators that are building their own presets and get this look and orange and teals and this is this and that, I really don't think there's any way that you can't get the Fuji Look or the Leica Look, or at least close to it, to where you can, sell it as their chrome, which is, an interpretation of this film, or it's an interpretation of this film. Mm-hmm. It's someone's idea of what that's supposed to look like, right, and try and translate it into a preset and give it to you so you can sell it as what you love.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it is nostalgic, right? Because a lot of us used to shoot film, and you fall in love with these different film emulsions like Velvia or whatever. It's like, whenever I shoot portraits, it has to be on Velvia because the grain structure, we could geek out on that stuff. And now we have presets or in-camera looks or algorithms that will simulate Velvia and that kind of thing. So, and Troy, I'm going to throw this to you. So then the question then becomes, based on what Chris was saying, if all these looks are recreatable within, whatever post-processing software we choose to use, does that mean that people that are saying, hey, I got this camera because of the Leica Look or because of the Fuji Look, are those people specifically saying, I shoot JPEG, right? So I want to bypass that raw stuff, and when I click the shutter, that JPEG file I get looks like Velvia, and now I'm gonna share that online. What do you think?
It's kind of, I mean, look, most of the modern cameras today, you can go in and build your own profile, your own look. Like, you control white balance, you control contrast, you can control sharpness. That's all some engineer did for you anyway, mm-hmm, right? When it comes to that look. To go back to what we were talking about, like the sensors are built differently in the hardware. And it is fair to say that a Fuji sensor is going to respond to, say, red light, blue light, green light, slightly different. And that might give you some different amount of information to work with once you bring it into RAW. It's pretty subtle. I don't think it's monstrous, but it is subtle. The Sony A7R Mark II and the Mark III have similar sensors, and the Nikon D850 has a sensor that's very similar, but it was designed by Nikon. Mm-hmm. So at some point they decided, we want to be more sensitive to less infrared light or less ultraviolet, or maybe a little less sensitivity to red. That is hard coded. That's not software. That's hard coded into the chip. So when I bring that raw file into Capture One, I might have a little bit more meat to work with, or a little bit less in a color range, and that might be what you need.
Yeah.
I do think, though, generally speaking, most people that would pick up a camera and go, oh, I just love how this looks, it's just a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And let's just be real, right? Anytime anybody asks me, like, oh, Troy, I want to buy a camera, what should I buy? I'm like, go to Sammy's or go to your local camera store, tell them to put the Sony, the Panasonic, the Fuji, the Nikon, put them on the counter, close your eyes and fondle one and see which one fits your hand best. Mm-hmm. Because that's the one you're going to be the best photographer with, because that's your better tool.
Well, let me throw another wrinkle in there for you, because I'm stoking the flame, stoking the fire here. It's my job. And this is not in my notes to talk about, but we have Craig Strong in the chat room. Hey, Craig Strong, co-founder of Lens Baby, is in there, and so in him being in there begs the question. We're talking about sensors and algorithms, and the whatever, all this stuff that happens inside the camera or after the light has entered the camera. Doesn't the light, or doesn't the lens have an effect on the color properties and the ultimate exposure that is rendered on that chip? Right?
Well, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So even the color. Yeah. Lenses affect the color. Lenses affect contrast. They affect everything. So when you say bringing it back around, so when you say, I like this camera because of the Fuji Look, and it's an interchangeable lens camera, right? And you throw a Sigma lens on that camera, doesn't that mess up that? I mean, Chris, I'll throw it to you. Doesn't it mess up your formula?
I'm sure it does. And my only real experience with that would be with Sony, because I've noticed, because I started shooting mirrorless with Sony, and now I shoot Fuji and Sony, and I have a Zeiss lens, and I have a Rokinon lens, and I have native Sony lenses, and some have a little bit more contrast. Some of them have just a weird not weird as a negative, but they're a little bit different. The coatings on them are a little bit different. Some more information gets to the sensor because of what's built into the lens and how it bends. It's tough to quantify, but yeah, there's a noticeable difference between what lenses that I select and shoot with Sony versus Fuji, because I have all native Fuji lenses except for a manual Rokinon lens, which I just shoot real estate with. So
yeah,
I don't get a lot of
don't
that,
hate on Rokinon.
I like
Rokinon is underrated. They make some killer glass, man.
Yeah, I like them for sure.
Yeah.
I bought it over the Zeiss 35 because it was just an awesome lens. It was a great deal.
Yeah. Troy, what about you, man? So bringing it back around, the lens, right? We've been talking about all the stuff that happens after the lens. Doesn't that factor into this whole look thing?
Oh, huge. Yeah, it's huge. And I, it's funny. I have I shoot D5s and A7R Mark IIs and 3s, and I got all these high-end bodies. And if you looked at my lenses, you'd be appalled because they are filthy dirty. They got fingerprints all over them. I don't put lens caps on my stuff.
It's like you buy a Ferrari and put bald, cheap tires on it.
No, it's a tool. Dude, it's a tool. It's a tool. And I know that if I got a little smear on my 400 millimeter, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, technically it matters if you want to be a pixel peeper and you want to go shoot a chart. It doesn't matter to my bride. It doesn't matter for 99% of what we're doing. It's a tool. It does help to know that it does make a difference, though. I do know that when I put the Sigma 8514 on my Nikon, other than the fact that it's heavier than crap, that thing is insanely sharp and contrasty, much more contrasty than was my Nikon lens. But I like that. But I know that that's how it's working. It's a tool that I look at and say, I want this tool to do this thing. That's great. That's great. And it helps to understand how they all relate to each other. I really don't care what my gear is. Just hand me something that works the way I want, and so I can go create that thing. And I use Sony and Nikon. So when I want to shoot macro, I use Sony because it's way easier.
Yeah.
With the live view stuff. I mean, it just
infrared, right?
Peaking.
You have an infrared sitting by.
Well, yeah, an infrared, focus peaking, stuff like that. I mean, that's a tool. Yeah.
Yeah,
I could even have a micro 4/3 and I'd be happy. Well,
don't give me. That's a whole different show. We're gonna talk about that. That's a whole different show. Don't even get me going down that route there. All right, let's talk about this from the standpoint of the end user, right? So we're in our little bubbles. We're in our little ecosystem of, hey, look at the camera I use, and I shoot Sony, and I got an A7, and I shoot Nikon. It's all the snobbery that we have as photographers, which is part of the fun. Frankly, we like to brag. It's like baseball cards or Pokemon, right? So, which is fine, but in the end, the end users like Troy on your side, your brides that are looking at your work, do you think they're looking at it and they're going, you know what? This is nice, Troy, but it doesn't have that Fuji look that I was.
They don't care.
I was looking for that Fuji look. If your contrast ratio is a little bit off.
If you saw how much I edited my images, I mean, the engineers would cringe. You'd be like, oh, you did what? There's details in those highlights. I don't care.
What's a highlight?
Those highlights. That's what I want. I don't want that.
What's a highlight? Is that a group from the 80s?
You worked hard to get that blue. I don't like that shade of blue. I'm gonna change it.
Yeah. I don't know, Chris. What do you think, man? I mean, do you think the end user really cares about any of the stuff we're talking about? They may, but they
might. What I've been running into a lot is, I think, with so much information available, and not just with real estate, which is my bread and butter. I think people will learn just enough to kind of do themselves harm when they want to hire someone to do a job that they can't do, but they know a lot about. Yeah. And they need to offload to someone else because they literally can't shoot their own wedding, or they can't shoot their own event, or they're a part of it, so they can't do it on their own. So I feel like when people have hired me, they've said, "Hey, I have this wedding, and here's what the type of wedding that it is, and here's what I know about you, and I've seen you travel, I've seen your work, and I like the person that you are, and you're not going to insert yourself in my event or whatever and ruin it. You'll be a part of it. You'll make it better, and you won't get in the way. You will flow with what they want.
Yeah.
On top of that, you can deliver great images to help them remember their event or whatever the case may be.
Called being the professional, right? But here's to bring it around full circle. Like we were talking about emulsions, back in the day, like Velvia and yada yada, all these different looks, which were great. I remember having a refrigerator full of yellow boxes, right, with organized into grids depending on what I was doing, and down at the bottom was the black and white film, and Panatomic X in there for long exposures.
Oh, yeah.
And all that. Remember all that? So in a lot of the looks that we see, including some of the looks that we see in represented as presets in some of today's software, right? So we see these names showing up again. Are we going to see these go away as kind of like a matter of attrition? Because like kids today are like, Velva who? Like what? Like what is that? My granddad used to have something like that in the refrigerator. I remember way back in the day, but I don't care about that. Or are these looks a thing of the past? Troy, why don't you take it first?
No. You know what? They're only going to grow because it helps people's visions. To be able to pop into a scenario and scroll through a set of presets and see something the way somebody else edited it, that makes them think, oh my God, I never thought of turning this, orange or pulling the color out or, flipping these tones or something. I mean, that really helps the creative vision. So I think that they're always going to stay there. Then there's always the lazy factor. There's always the person who really doesn't want to learn how to do it, and maybe lazy isn't fair, but the idea is like I have a preset, it does what I want it to do, and I'm going to get back to work, and that's great. Something I think we need to keep in mind with we're talking a lot about looks, which are preferential, right? They're preferences.
Right.
There are physical limitations to certain cammers that have to play into this as well. I mean, the
Speak
tonal
for yourself,
range.
man. My cameras have.
Yeah. So let's just talk about shooting star trails. Micro Four Thirds versus.
Right, let's move on.
It's also about like high ISO capacity, right? Like how high can you go and get clean ISO? A denser a chip is going to be more noisy, than not.
Yeah.
Exposure range, dynamic range, that's going to matter in your chip. So you need all those things factor into a look.
All right.
But presets are going to be around.
All right. So here, let's close this part of the conversation off, and then we'll move on to the next topic. Give both of you a chance to answer this. Chris, you're going to go first here. So here's a hypothetical situation. A person that like and love is getting into photography. They got some money to spend. They say they got $5,000 to spend on this first kit. They're lucky.
Man.
And I don't want to tell you this person has heard that Fuji has this look that is amazing, and I must have this look. I went to this trade show, and everyone was talking about the Fuji Look, but then they also talk about the Leica Look. How do I know which look I need? How would you counsel? How would you personally counsel that person? I know this is hard because you've been marinating in Fuji juice for years, right?
Yeah. That's really tough. $5,000.
Yep,
that's a lot of money. Somebody can get into a lot of trouble with $5,000.
Yep.
I got to preface this by saying this is an amazing time to have $5,000 to spend on tools to create.
This is hypothetical. This is a hypothetical person. They don't.
This is hypothetical.
Have the money.
Okay. Honestly, I would say keep the
that hypothetical person made some really good choices in life.
Yeah. And now they're gonna spend it all on a camera, their first camera. But yeah, I mean,
you'd say go buy Apple stock, right?
Yeah, I would say don't stop at 2 cameras. I would say explore past the quote unquote look, because and look at software and look at a system to edit and look at kind of a little bit of the whole creative process and then kind of reverse engineer that, because I mean, sure, I'm shooting a couple different systems, but I've gone through a lot of cameras like, oh, this is great, I'm going to buy this. And, oh, man, but I didn't know enough, still don't know, as I learn more, I learn there's a lot more to learn. But even in the beginning, when I got my Sony, I loved it and I thought it was great, but I bought it too fast and I didn't really explore. And I would say play the field and get something older, because there's 5D2s everywhere. There's D750s everywhere. You know, there's Mark 1 A7s and A7Rs everywhere. And those are freaking amazing tools. I mean, they're great, and the software has only gotten better. And there's just so much to choose. I would say don't buy into the quote-unquote look if you're buying your first camera. I would say explore, play the field, put your hands on some cameras, go into a photography group, get a loaner camera, go to a meetup, try a bunch of stuff, you know, play with some lenses. If you're buying your first camera, look, it's probably focal length as well. It's probably depth of field. I mean, like, you got to play the field a little bit, but I mean, you hit it right on the head. You got to dive in, and you got to play with this stuff, which is why I enjoy Apple stores, right? Because before you buy something, you can go in there and, you know, get your DNA all over the computer, then leave, right? So, and the same with these cameras. These cameras are even more personal, I think, in a lot of ways, where you're going to be with them for probably longer than you'd be with a computer, you know, for the most part. So why not rent? If you're making a jump like this, I would advise somebody to rent something first from Borrow Lenses or lensrentals.com. And play with it for a couple days and see how the OS works with you, see how the ergonomics work with you, and then, you know, then go from there. Troy Miller, what about you, man? You got this hypothetical person, and this is not a real person. You got this hypothetical person with $5,000 in their pocket. They've heard all this information about these looks that they should be striving for, that are magical and not attainable anyplace else. What would you tell them?
Oh, this is easy. So easy. So easy.
Right? All right, I'm waiting now. I'm on the edge of my seat.
A7R Mark II.
Wow.
Some lenses. Yeah.
Why? You got to back that up.
Because it's the most flexible camera system that you can get into, that has some of the best quality of any camera that's on the market in existence today, medium format and 35 millimeter. And
you love the operating system in that camera.
Okay, the menu system is total crap.
Thank you. I got to call you out, man.
Yeah. And you know, to qualify that though, I mean, at some point somebody's going to say, you know, excuse me, I'm going to go shoot Formula 1. You know what? And you're going to shoot in the evening. Okay, well, the A7R Mark II is not going to cut it for you. It's not going to focus at night as well as, you know, a D850 or a D800 or an older D4 or, you know, other bodies. And that's where you start splitting hairs. But if you just want a 90% all around wedding, portrait, landscape, amazing quality, low noise, high ISO, killer glass, Sony. You know, and I'm a diehard Nikon guy. My Nikon will walk circles around my Sony stuff, but that's where I would suggest. And I have many times suggested that, and I think it's an amazing place to be.
Yeah, and we're gonna transition into some Nikon talk in just a second here. You know, you guys realize we're like 40 minutes into the show already. You see how fast these shows go?
That's awesome.
You see how fast these shows go? But there's a question I want to throw out there just to close this off, and it popped up while both of you guys were talking. And Troy, I'll throw it to you first. So the idea of, you know, purchasing a camera system, right? We tend to think, and me personally, when I say we, I mean me, but we tend to think of, okay, I'm a X shooter. I'm a Lumix shooter. I'm a Micro Four Thirds shooter. I'm a Sony guy. I'm a Fuji Nista, whatever Fuji people call themselves. I'm a Sonyite, you know.
We don't even know.
We don't even know, but we have all these buckets that we like to self-categorize ourselves into. Do we have to do that? I mean, money and budget notwithstanding, can't we have different tools for different jobs, right? I mean, can't we have a Samsung refrigerator and a, you know, different brand oven? Or does everything have to be the same? What do you think, Troy Miller?
No, absolutely not. And I would hope that you don't stick to that and you don't think you need it to be the same. I mean, you know, I go to my garage, I've got 72 screwdrivers. I don't need 70, I need 72 because each one of those does a different job, right? I've got 3 plasma cutters and I've got 4 welders and I've got 9 angle grinders because they all do something a little bit different. Yeah. So photography.
But you also turn around 3 times before you enter any room too, right?
I got into Sony because I wanted to shoot infrared.
Yeah.
And to shoot infrared, I wanted a live viewfinder. And Nikon didn't have a live viewfinder, so I bought an A7R, paid like $1,500 for it at the time, and I converted it to infrared. And that introduced me to the Sony system. I've got friends that love to shoot birds. All they want to do is shoot birds. They don't want to shoot anything but birds. So they shoot Olympus and Panasonic because, that longer glass is less expensive. They get full frame. I mean, not full frame. They fill the frame, and that's great for them. So whatever tool it is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know.
What about you, Mr. Barry? What do you think?
Oh man, I really feel like the world is kind of your oyster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can't not sit here and say I don't love shooting with. I have two different. I have an X-T2, an X-H1, and I have an A7 III, and I will pick each of them up for something different. If I want to do some street stuff and I don't want to be a target, I'm going to get the smallest camera I can and take one lens, and that's my X-T2. If I want IBIS and I want the same Fuji look and I want consistency and I want to be able to move from one camera to the next with video and stills, I'm just going to pick up the Fuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good. That's what I was getting to, right? I always say this on the show. It doesn't necessarily need to be an or. It can be an and. Right, so yeah. I use Micro Four Thirds for video and travel because I like the weight, or the lack of weight of the system, and I do a lot of video, so I like that system. But for this kind of photography, it's okay. I'm saying to everybody out there, it's okay to cheat on one system with another system.
Oh, it's
not
wants
you to. It wants you to.
You can have a side camera. I'm just saying.
No.
Yeah.
They love it in the same bag together. It's awesome.
Exactly. What they're doing in that bag.
And the best part is you open up your bag and you're like, am I going to do star trails with the Sony tonight or the Nikon? Do I carry the Nikon around and put the Sony for the time lapse? And I think that's where it's at because I know that my Sony will not focus in low light as well as my Nikon.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go wander around, I was just out in Mammoth, Mono Lake, walking around shooting stuff. I'm going to walk around with a 24-1.4 on my Nikon because that thing's going to manual focus, shoot the moon. I got my Nikon over in the corner doing a star trail. Like, how amazing is that? Like, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Instead of trying to force fit. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chris.
The subject wants that.
Yeah.
Like if I am, shooting up close on, an old lady in the front row of a wedding, I'm gonna get a small camera so I can get close. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be seen. That's the tool that I want. Same thing. The stars are the subject. What do those stars need to show the truth of what they are in your camera in that moment?
Yeah. Yeah. Julio Shorio brings up a good topic in the chat. He's saying more important than the camera, in his opinion, is the glass. Good glass can last a lifetime. I'm sure, Mr. Craig Strong would echo that as well. Do you guys agree with that? I mean, do you agree? Like, we're having this conversation about camera bodies and looks and processors and all that stuff, and we haven't touched so much on the glass itself. Like, should photographers, when they purchase a new system, be cognizant of the glass that they're buying more so? In other words, like when you buy a new camera system, it comes with that kit glass in there, which, is not that great. Should you just be buying a body and paying more attention to, part of that $5,000, I'm going to buy the best glass that I can get, knowing that this body is relatively disposable? Troy Miller, what do you think?
It depends on how good you are. And what I mean by that is like, you take a beginner, you can give them a plastic lens. They're super excited to create images, and they're out of focus flowers, because the lens is cracked or bent or whatever. It's going to look like you shot it with a lens baby, and everybody's going to be like, oh, that is amazing. Mm-hmm. Right? Like all of us geeks are like, oh, that lens, that's like a $3 lens. I mean, I'll take that out and shoot that lens. So it's about the tool. Again, there is a level of acceptability, I think, for a professional to look at their glass and realize, like, this is going to be sharp edge to edge. I'm not going to have weird distortions, things. I'm really not that worried about it.
Yeah.
You know, in my work, I'm not a commercial shooter. You don't need to see every hair and pore on a bride's face. You don't need it. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy if a lens is slightly less sharp than that lens over there. I want attributes within that lens. I want super shallow depth of field. I want it tight. I want it to be able to focus and focus fast. I want to be able to stand in a rainstorm and shoot with that. Yeah. That's when the lens matters. That's when the equipment matters more. Yeah. So it's all sliding. It's all a sliding scale based on what you're going to do with it.
Yeah. There's a bunch of scales in there that slide, you know, from budget to subject matter to the skill of the shooter to how serious you are about photography. I mean, you could even throw into that salad, you know, do you have friends that are shooting a similar system that you could borrow a lens or two from? Right. So that might affect your decision. If I know Troy lives around the corner from me and he's got every Nikon lens made by man, you know, maybe I'm going to go Nikon. You know?
That is one of the reasons that I went with Nikon in the beginning. Was I had a buddy of mine, Rodney, that he had a giant bag of Nikon glass. And then when I decided and I chose Nikon, I was like, sweet. Yeah. I'll just buy a body in one piece. And then I grew from there. So that's really what it's about, right? It comes down to a tool. It comes down to understanding that tool and then putting it to work.
Yeah, love it. All right, speaking of tools, let's continue this Nikon discussion. And folks in the chat room, I want to remind you that you know, if you have a question for us, go ahead and post that in the comments. Make sure you mention This Week in Photo so it'll highlight on my screen there. And Chris Berry, our community manager, Chris is on the show. Chris Berry is doing double duty so that I can be lazy over here and host the show. Chris is going to help collate those questions, and we'll get to them after the pick of the week segment. But the next thing I want to talk about is Nikon, Troy Miller.
Yay!
So you saw this in the notes, right? So
I did, yeah.
So Nikon, let me set it up for you, then I'll let you. I'll put the ball on the T-ball stand, and you can swing at it. So the gist of the story is after much waiting or marinating, it looks like Nikon is going to be coming out with a brand new mirrorless camera that's allegedly going to use the F mount, which is, I believe, unless I'm reading this wrong, Troy, it's going to use the Nikon F mount, which means it's going to be compatible with all the lenses that you already own if you're a Nikon shooter, which is ideal. And a bunch of other bells and whistles. So apparently they're throwing their weight behind mirrorless. They're not giving up on DSLR, so they're not going to end of life DSLRs. They're adding another product line, which is mirrorless, to compete with the likes of Sony and Fuji and Panasonic and Olympus, et cetera, et cetera. So Troy Miller, did I hit that right, or did I miss something?
No, it sounds right. And the only way that the Nikon mirrorless system would be of any value to me, the only way I would even look at it is if it left the same mount as my current bodies. That's the only way. Otherwise, it would just be another camera system with a Nikon label. It wouldn't matter to me at all.
Yeah.
Because
the F mount, right? The Nikon F mount.
Yeah, it would have to be the F mount, and that's what I would need. So then all my other glass can work with that. And then I have, what are the features? What's the portability? What's that look like? Mm-hmm. I have so much Sony stuff. I'm probably not going to jump into that right away, but I would certainly like to test the water. But that could be something I could take along on a wedding. I could put that in a pocket. I could put that on the side in my bag. I could go do some stuff with it. Being mirrorless, it's small, it's lightweight. That would be killer.
Yeah.
If it didn't have that F mount, I wouldn't even look at it.
I'm worried, and I'll tell you why. And Chris Bear, I'm going to throw it over to you in a second. I'm worried because I purchased that Nikon, I forget what the name of the product was, but it was their 360 VR camera that they launched about a year or so ago. And then it was the first, literally probably, I think the first piece of camera gear that I returned. And it
was bad.
I couldn't even get it to mount. I couldn't get it connect to my phone. It was just like, what I was thinking at the time was, dude, seriously, come on. You know, I was like, all these devices out here that I have floating around me, from my DJI Osmo to my drone to, you know, little 360 cameras that I bought over here, my Insta360, all these things connect effortlessly. All my Lumix cameras connect effortlessly to my phone. It's not rocket science these days.
Right.
And I couldn't get that to connect. And that was its core competency, was to connect. So I'm like, so that shook my faith in Nikon. So I'm like, okay, well, the next thing they come out with is going to be questionable. So then, Chris, I want to throw this out to you. So the other piece of that is they've been waiting so long, and there's so much built up expectation and anticipation for what this mirrorless system could and should be. It's got to have F mount. It's got to do this. It's got to have an articulated LCD screen. It's got, it's got to shoot 4K. All these different things. Can they possibly come out with this, a holy grail of a camera, or are they just setting themselves up to fail?
Ooh, that's tough. I don't think they're going to fail. I feel like full frame mirrorless camera, Sony is just like a maglev train right now, and that the E mount is just such a flexible mount that you can put essentially anything you want on it. And I think that is a huge benefit of shooting mirrorless. I can put Leica lenses on my Fuji. I can put Canon. I can use a finger and put, I can put speed boosters on it or whatever. I think beyond the fact that Nikon's going to come out with a mirrorless, like what is it going to allow the end user to do? Because mirrorless allows flexibility with how you create the live view, the mounts, the adapters, things, the size, things of that nature. I think that is going to be, the question for a lot of people who may be new to Nikon, but I definitely agree with Troy. Like, you have to offer something new for that FX user, or you might not tap into your market, or tap into that market. Yeah. I love the D750. A friend of mine shoots D850. He loves it. He's also waiting for a Nikon mirrorless option. I think there's a lot of people that are waiting for their team to come out with something compelling and awesome. They've had a lot of time. They're an old company. They should have the resources. But Sony makes the sensors. They make a ton of sensors. Like They have the scale. They can produce these units. And even the A7 III was like, out of stock here, back ordered there. Right. The D850 is, I think it's still back ordered now in some places. So shoot.
I wonder.
They have an uphill,
You know what I wonder? I wonder is Nikon entering this race way too late? Like, all the other manufacturers, and I hope not. I'm not betting against Nikon at all. I hope they crush it. But I'm wondering, if this is the Indianapolis 500, are all the other cars on their like fourth lap already, and figuring things out? Their tires are warm, they're sticking to the track, and Nikon is now rolling out of the pits with their brand new car that hasn't been tested even one lap around. Troy, what do you think? Is it too late for them to enter and be competitive? Has mindshare already been distributed against the, around the other players, or can they come in and be disruptive at this point?
Oh, I think they can totally come in. I think Sony proved that you can come in with innovative design and engineering, and you can make a market for yourself. I mean, Sony, squeezed themselves in to the big two, right, with their mirrorless market, and they made their way. I think there is latitude in that market for Nikon. I do think though that the fervency for mirrorless is going to diminish over time, because mirrorless in and of itself as a mirrorless system, it doesn't have huge benefits, right? I mean, ultimately it's still a camera, right? I mean, live viewfinder and all those kind of things, like those are cool, right? But they're just little pieces in it. It's not a better system because it's mirrorless for the most part. Your images aren't necessarily better. So what I'm
see now you're throwing like breadcrumbs in the koi pond now. See,
no, because it all comes down to the sensor, right? It comes down to the sensor. Once that shutter's open and you're exposing, it doesn't matter whether it's a mirrorless camera or it's a DSLR. It makes no difference.
True. I agree with you when it comes down to just sheer. If you look at it from the lens of just image quality, yeah. Doesn't matter. But if you look at it from the standpoint of all this stuff is connected, from how you make the image, how you feel about your camera, being able to see the live view, to do your composition to the focus peaking, to all these little things that combine to make the photography experience more enjoyable, then it makes sense. It's not just the photons hitting the sensor and capturing them. It's all the stuff that happens before the photons get in the camera. Right.
And in the life between a mirrorless camera and a DSLR right now is huge in part of functionality. It's about how rugged are they, how well sealed are they, but those all come down to the tools. Ultimately, when you open that shutter, can you get the image that you want? That's what I'm really talking about, right? Everything else is peripheral, right?
Yeah.
You
say it's peripheral. We can agree to disagree. You say peripheral. I say it's part of a whole. I mean, that saying it's peripheral is like saying, yeah, a car, all you really need is an engine and some wheels. But for a really nice experience in a car that we've become accustomed to, you need power seats, you need a radio, you need Apple CarPlay in there, you need Bluetooth, you need GPS, you need lane assistance, you need power windows, you need all these things. Right? You want them, but we've become used to it. You could say, well, all you really need is a horse, and a buggy. You get to where you're going.
Yeah. Hey, I would love a Nikon DSLR body that's fully manual. You don't need to think for me. You don't need to focus for me. You don't need to image stabilize for me. Just give me a big ass sensor that's got amazing tonality and super low noise. That's it. Keep all that tech out. Save me all the money. Give me that. I want that.
Come on, Troy. That's like saying, you know what? Elon Musk with your fancy rockets that can land again by themselves and be reusable. No. We don't need that. We had the Apollo. We used to drop our modules in the ocean and go retrieve them. Why do you got to land on a drone ship?
It's a tool. It would be a tool for something that I would enjoy. To answer your question, I think if Nikon is clever about their development and they look at what tools photographers need and how to help them take that tool out, then it would become a need. For example, I can put 13 stops of ND filter on my D5 and my D850 and go to live view, and I can see my subject and I can touch the back of the screen in focus.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Can't do that on the Sony.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
That's a tool.
Yeah.
And if you're a landscape shooter or something, like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Sony had they don't have it on the A7R Mark IIIs, but they had software you could load on the A7R Mark IIs and the earlier bodies. And they had a piece of software called Smooth Reflections. You could go do these amazing long exposure, remove humans in the middle of the day, no ND filters, no nothing. That was insanely cool.
Yeah.
And they nixed that.
Yeah.
Keep that all gone.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, I gotta call out Good Dog in the chat room. Good Dog says I'm a Apple fanboy because I mentioned Apple CarPlay. My car does not have Apple CarPlay. I wish it had it in there. It doesn't have Android Play or any of that stuff in there. But I hear that's the way things are going. These kinds of user interfaces that let you control your phone without taking your eyes off the road. So that's all I'm saying there. All right, guys, let's move on. This next thing I'm going to talk about is Mavic, and this is right up one of our guests' alley there, Chris Berry.
Right, you
are a certified licensed drone operator, right?
I am, yep.
Yeah,
I do.
so you saw this. I know you got your finger on the pulse of drones and whatever. If DJI shifts their weight to one butt cheek over the other one, you know about it.
I know it. I feel it. I feel a glitch in the matrix.
You feel it like something's happening. They're about to do something. So you saw.
I can't help you there. I got a drone, got stuck in a tree, fell out of a tree, got it fixed. Now it kind of hovers like this.
Yeah, flies sideways.
Yeah, dude, I use it to chase kids with it. That's about it. That's all I can do.
So Chris, you saw the rumor about the new DJI Mavic, and then they came out with a statement. Run us through what happened. Is there a new Mavic coming out, and if so, what does it have in it? And do I want it?
The word that the last word that I have is that there are two Mavics. One's called the Mavic Zoom, and the other is the more pro version with a 2x zoom, dolly, like a dolly feature with the 2x zoom, and then the holy grail 1-inch sensor and a foldable drone is the Mavic Pro 2.
Okay.
So initially there was a leaked image. There was, a big press event that was rescheduled, Everyone wanted to know what it was about. Was it hardware? Was it software? Et cetera, et cetera. But they're just, from what I've read, they're fixing the user experience. They're changing things around. They want to deliver a drone that is ready for the market, because when the Mavic came out, there were gimbal issues. There were some fuzzy images. There was a hardware shortage, and they don't want history to repeat itself with the Mavic. But yeah, that's the gist of what I know about the drone now, the two drones now. But I've seen a picture of the Mavic Enterprise. I've seen some images of what looks like a speaker on top of a drone, which would be weird. So there's been
on a drone?
Yeah, it looks like a speaker. It's like sits on top of the drone. It's very, very strange. Huh. But with the Mavic, it's a really good baseline for doing NDVI or infrared or different types of things on top of that drone, because it's very light. You can fold it up and you can do all kinds of search and rescue, FLIR cameras. It's a great platform. So I think DJI may have seen a little bit of that, and there's some prototypes floating around. But generally, it's a Mavic 2 with a 2x optical zoom, and then the Mavic Pro with the 1-inch sensor.
Love it. Always something new to spend money on, right?
Yeah.
Or to lose money on, Troy Miller, right?
Hey, as long as they innovate and it does something cool. I mean, I got a drone as a toy. I can't use it in my business at all. I mean, I don't have any time to use it, but I do like flying it. Yeah. Away from trees, keep it away from them.
But you could use it in wedding photography if you got licensed, right?
No, even licensed, you can't fly it over people.
Oh, that's
so
right.
I'm too close to people, and to be honest, I'm too busy working doing other things. I would love a Chris Berry to go with me, and hey, let's do this cool shot on the bridge. You fly down the the river, and let him do that.
Yeah,
I'm busy posing, and I don't want to I specialize.
That translates to let him be liable for the lawsuit.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah. I'm definitely down. And honestly, I know a lot of wedding photographers and event photographers that I'm like, hey man, you should tried putting a drone in your business. Nah, I just call you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I got friends here that if I'm gonna go shoot someplace that I think could be really cool and have a little promo reel or something, I'll call them up. Hey, I got a cool wedding. You want to come down for a couple hours during the engagement session or the romantic session? It's gonna be nice. Yeah, come down. Do those shots. I'm happy.
That's a whole nother show we got to do on this. I haven't done too much on drones lately. We were on this whole drone kick for a couple episodes a year or so ago, and I got the This Week in Photo audience is not shy, and they let me know.
I remember this.
You remember this? Like, okay, enough with the drones. We understand you got one, okay, but there are things to talk about. So we shied away from drones for a little while, but now I think it's time to talk about them. One last thing on the drone thing. Julio Shorio's in the chat room. What's up, G? He brought up a good conspiracy theory topic in there, Chris. I want to have you speak to. He says DJI releases a new drone every 6 months and then sells the data to the Chinese government. Is that tin hat, foil hat type thinking, or
what? Who knows?
It is connected to the internet. It does it has lots of sensors on there, so theoretically you can get a lot of data off of that thing.
You know what? I'm pretty sure there is a way to get it if it's not already somewhere in the cloud accessible by people that maybe shouldn't have that information. But as far as a new drone coming out every 6 months, I just don't need another sensor, another drone. There's only one. I have 3, and 2, I kind of like being married, like a lot. And
you know what? Next time, I want to give you some advice, Chris, because I'm older than you and I can give you advice. So the next time you are on your way to push that Amazon Prime buy now button on a drone or something. Hop in the car and go to Tiffany's and get something.
Yeah.
No.
Well, last time I got a drone and I was like, ooh. I went for an Apple Watch for my wife and I was like, if I bring her this watch, I can totally get a Mavic Air and it'll be my last one.
Oh my God.
And it totally worked. But in all honesty, I have an Inspire. I have the Phantom 4 Pro, which I announced in 2016 that, the day that I got here, I unboxed it here. It was my pick of the week.
Yep.
And I have the Air. So another drone would just be like an ego thing, or like, hey, I got the latest, greatest. But I mean, it's already overkill with 3 drones. You know, I just don't know how much more I can create with whatever's coming up.
Nothing. You're gonna be like the Jay Leno of drones, man. Come on.
No need for another drone, because DJI has like 70% of the market or something like that. Yeah. If there isn't a drone on the market for you with DJI now, the Mavic 2 isn't really going to give you any more.
Right, yeah. You know what I mean? Well, and that's a problem. I think that that's a similar problem that GoPro hit, right? And Troy, you can speak to this as well, right? Is the whole idea of you create a product that's pretty good, but it doesn't have built-in obsolescence. And once people get one, the one that they have does the job. You don't really need to upgrade it or side grade it or get another one that's slightly smaller or black or whatever, you know. And I would guess that's why the GoPro kind of market started plunging, because they made a really great, superior product. They defined the action cam space. Then a bunch of other players came in, started eating away at their market share, but GoPro also made a superior product that didn't really break, because it couldn't by design. It's designed to be durable and go on forever. So, you know, another one comes out, it's another $400 or $500. You're like, well, you know, the one I have is great. I don't know if I don't. You know,
I think that we're all guilty of. Well, the one I have is great, but you know, that one is a little bit smaller, right? Like that's fine. You know, GoPro's issue was a little bit different. GoPro oversupplied the world. I mean, they were everywhere, right? And they weren't selling them. And so they got stuck with this overstock, and that's what really killed them. I think, you know, GoPro, you know, design, you know, everybody go design amazing products and then develop the next amazing product on top of that. Because we'll buy it. Just give me a reason that I need it, and then I'll buy it. Yeah. Because I flip it. I'll flip it. I'll buy it. I'll sell it. I'll write it off. And then there you go.
Yeah, that's the whole magic of marketing, putting on my marketing hat. Like, most people you don't have to sell to. You just have to, like, they're already like on the edge of buying. They've already sold themselves. You just got to give them a little bit of reason why it makes sense for them to buy it, right? And then to convince themselves. Yeah. You push them over the edge, you got them, right? You don't have to, like, you know, do the hard sell.
And from a business point of view, I mean, for me, everything I buy is a write-off. Yeah. Right. So I buy a $6,000 camera. I use it for 3 years. I turn around and I sell it for $4,000. I got a you know, a $2,000 write-off on it. So that camera ends up costing me what in the end? You know, a couple grand, not even that much a year to use like the latest tech. And then I sell it. I go buy the next latest one because it offers me something new. I like it. I look cool with my friends because they're all shooting D4s and I'm shooting D5, you know.
Yeah, must be true. Yeah. All right, well, cool. You know, I want to, before we move on to the Picks of the Week segment, I want to send a plea out to the chat room. Chat room, go ahead and click that thumbs up button and help our video become more noticed on YouTube. And, you know, you'd be surprised how just a little thumbs up will help the algorithm add more weight to us. So if you wouldn't mind clicking thumbs up, that is if you're enjoying this video, do that. But let's move on, guys, to the Picks of the Week segment. This is the segment where you guys get to recommend anything to the This Week in Photo audience, as long as it is somehow related to photography. Troy Miller, I'm gonna let you go first, man. What is your pick of the week?
What was my pick of the week? Oh, I went back and forth on this one because so my pick of the week was art festivals. Yeah. And, you know, and I just came back, if anybody lives in Southern California, I just came back from the Sawdust Festival. I went and saw the Pageant of the Masters, one of those kind of things that you really got to go see. It's unique. And what it inspired me to think about was the tools don't matter. It's the artist. You know, artists were painting. I mean, they have paintbrushes and they have paint, and they all Impressionists and Picasso and, you know, Gauguin and these guys, and they went out and made art and nobody cared. They starved. They couldn't sell their work, but they went out and made art anyway. Yeah. And I'm sure that they sat around and goes, dude, this brush is way better than your brush. Right? This is horsehair. No, this is goat hair. No, this is hair from Brenda that I met. You know, it's like
it's just still in my basement. Right?
Yeah. And so, you know, it's really just, I love all the tech, and I'm very opinionated about my gear, and I love all that. But just go feed the artist. Just get out there, get inspired, go create stuff. You don't need another drone. Go use the one you have, right? Go,
Chris, he's talking to you, man.
Yep. Amen. It's the truth.
Yeah. That's good. So art festival, I love it. Perfect.
Yeah. Go see some art.
All right. Christopher Berry, man, what is your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is a book. It's a book. Nick Fancher.
What are those?
Studio Anywhere 1 and 2, and it's for sale on RockyNook.com. And it's this third one he's got. The third one that I have. I think he has 1 or 2 more before Studio Anywhere, but this one's called Chroma. It's a photographer's guide to lighting with color. Mm-hmm. He's a commercial guy. He does some great color work with just basic tools. 5D3 and an 85 and a couple lenses and some speed lights. He teaches you just inexpensive ways to create. With a messenger bag and a couple light stands. Really, really cool stuff. It just came out, and I have the electronic copy, which you can get a bundle. I think it's 40% off right now. But super cool dude. He's done work with Kevin Hart, some NFL people as well. Great stuff. He teaches as well. So yeah, Chroma.
And that's called Chroma.
A photographer's guide to lighting with color.
A photographer's guide to lighting with color. Okay, and we'll link to that in the notes in the description for this episode. Very cool. Awesome. Rocky Nook. Very cool. All right, I have a pick of the week this week. I don't normally have a pick of the week, but I have a pick of the week. So this pick of the week is it's a series on Netflix. It's not, I think it came out in 2016, so a couple of years ago. So I may be late to the party. But if you haven't seen the series yet, it's called Tales by Light. It's a Netflix series. They have 2 seasons out, and it is these individual sort of documentary style adventures by photographers. Like some photographers are going to Ethiopia and shooting, different tribes up there. Some photographers are shooting lions. That's their passion. Some are shooting whales, and they talk about why they do it and how they're doing it. It goes on and on and on. There's 2 seasons. I think there's a total of, I'm not sure, I want to say under 10-ish episodes. And they're not that long, but if you watch these, you start sort of getting jazzed about photography again. Because you see all these different kinds of genres and you see what they're using. They're like the thing that struck me when I was watching these was how little they talk about gear.
Nice.
Like these photographers are out there. You hear them talk about their passion for what they're doing and why they're shooting it and how they're setting up the light and how they're camping out and waiting for the light to hit so they can capture it and all this stuff. And even the cinematography, they're not showing Canon logos or Nikon logos or whatever. They're just, the cameras are a bit player in the overall story of this is a person that's out there capturing stories and important things to them around the world. So one of the cool ones in there that I want to recommend in the Tales by Light series is by TWiP alum Eric Chang. So Eric Chang,
oh nice,
yeah, Eric Chang has been on This Week in Photo several times. I've done a couple one-on-one interviews with him. Eric Chang used to work at DJI, and he went on to work at Google or Facebook, one of those, I believe. I'm not sure if he's still there, but he is an underwater photographer. And he does like ridiculous underwater shots that you're like, wait, how did you get that shot without becoming lunch, right? So,
right.
And he is in season 2, episodes 3 and 4.
Nice.
Specifically, I want to recommend episode 4 of season 2. Eric Chang's in it because he talks about his love of sharks and photographing sharks, and he goes into trying to dispel the myth of how dangerous sharks are. They're swimming mouths that if you get near them, they'll eat you, yada, yada, yada. And if you watch that season 2, episode 4 of Tales by Light, I guarantee you'll come away with a different understanding of sharks and how violent or not violent they are.
I will not.
Yeah. Watch it. I'm telling you, watch it. They're in there. He's in a literal swarm of sharks around him, and he's petting them on the head. He's like treating them like puppies, like just like holding them and stroking them like this, and there's these teeth out, like what? And so that was in season 4. In season 3, this is Eric, so you're going to get a glimpse into Eric's personality. Season 3, he goes hunting for these large anacondas to photograph underwater.
I am so thankful that there are humans out there that do that so that I can see what the rest of the world looks like, because there is no way you're going to convince me that an eating machine is safe.
It's inspiring, man. It is inspiring if you look at it, because they're like, you know, and they recite some statistics about how many people are killed by other people versus sharks versus this versus that, you know. And sharks, I think I don't want to misstate this, but he was saying that on average 75 people a year get injured by sharks, and of them 5 people die. And then
and 100 people went in the water.
Yeah, but but he's saying those attacks are from people that don't know how to interact with sharks. It's not like sharks are like, you know what, I got a taste for some human, you know, and they it's people that are acting stupid in the water, you know, allegedly. I don't know. So if you got bit by a shark and you weren't doing anything, don't come at me.
You're in their house, right? That's their territory. You should know.
You are in their world, a foreign environment of which you are kind of, you know, prey. But it's interesting. Regardless, just from a photographic standpoint, the cinematography in that series is so well done. I mean, it's like the Planet Earth series done, but with a photography slant, you know. And you know, I can't recommend it enough, especially to the This Week in Photo watchers and viewers, because if you're anything like me, which most of you are, this kind of thing will get your juices flowing in terms of creativity and excitement for photography. So, very cool stuff. All right, it is time for the Q&A segment. Chris, you haven't been doing your job, man. I don't see any questions.
Not much in there.
I see no questions in our question segment in our Google Doc. I saw one from Steven Sharp. Steven had one up earlier. I'm trying to find it. I'm scrolling up to find it. Steven, repost your message, and anyone else who has a question, go ahead and post it now so we don't have to scroll up and find it. Go ahead and post it in the chat room now, and we will get to it. But before we do that, so Troy, this is me filling and vamping, right? So you and I were trading messages back and forth a little bit about F64 Live, right?
Yep.
And we were brainstorming about what my topic on F64 Live is going to be. I'm not going to give it away.
Oh,
I don't want to give it.
You should read it. Read that.
What?
Read that statement you sent me.
I forgot what it was. I don't know.
Oh.
I got to find it. Oh, you mean, what I said about what the description of the keynote is going to be?
Yeah, that little paragraph. You need to read that, because that is so in my wheelhouse. I love that so much. And it fits this topic today. It fits. This is perfect.
It absolutely does. All right, I'm going to bring it up now. Let's see if I can find it. So this was, so you and I were, God, my Mac's not going to let me do it. See, I got to put a bullet in this Mac. This Mac is done. Anybody want a 2015 5K or Retina iMac? It's all yours.
No, you make it a second monitor is what you do.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, so the gist is, I'll see if I can paraphrase it since I wrote it. I think I was drinking Mountain Dew at the time. But it was about the topic being, you are not a photographer. You know, mm-hmm. So starting off the top, the talk with, you are not a photographer, and the gist of it is, you are no more a photographer than, you know, if you call yourself a photographer, you're sort of downgrading yourself into the homogeny of everyone who captures images or light with a device, because they're all technically photographers, and anything with a fur on it, like stenographer or cartographer, you know, these are people, no disrespect to those professions, but these are people that are doing a highly technical skill that other people could learn and do. You, on the other hand, as a photographer, are someone who is creating something that is subjective. You are not a photographer, you are an artist. And I want to talk, you know, the gist of the talk that I'm going to be doing is down those lines of start thinking like an artist versus yet another photographer, because the word photographer has been polluted with Instagram and all these other things out there that has given everyone superpowers, and now no one has superpowers. So to rise above that, you Troy, and you Chris are not photographers. You are artists who have chosen to work in the medium of capturing photons. That's what you are.
Right. And I just found the what's this 200 word limit? That's just ridiculous.
Oh, that's lame.
Oh, 200 word limit on what?
On your thing, I found it. So basically, I'll read it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And it says the title will be "You Are Not a Photographer." It says labeling yourself as a photographer drops the craft down to such commodity labor levels as stenographer, cartographer. By the way, cartographer reminds me of the Halo game, or any other technical skills that are relatively devoid of creativity. You are an artist who chooses to express him or herself by recording light. Photographer literally means recorder of light. You are so much more than that. So from today forward, you should call yourself an artist with a capital A.
Dang, I wrote that.
That's good.
Jeez.
Grant Johnson. Oh man,
that was one of my split personalities that was engaged. Yeah,
but then you add our discussion, about it's not about the tool, it's about the hand that's wielding it, that's creating it. It's the mind behind that tool. So yeah, it definitely fits that.
I think like on that subject, when it comes to kind of really backtrack, when it comes to the new Nikon camera, I think the camera, if someone was to buy that one camera and they are an artist, how well will this new Nikon camera allow them to capture the art that they want to capture? Like, does that help that creator create art in the way that they have chosen to with that, whether it be, okay, now this camera does video, et cetera, et cetera. Can this camera do it? Yeah. Or do I have to get an A7 III or 2 different or 3 different cameras to do all the things that I need to do to make my art?
Yeah. You know what really impresses me when I talk to photographers is these photographers, like, who was one of them? I can't remember her name. But there was this photographer there was actually a couple of them that use these beat up old cameras and computers that barely work, that they have to like stick chewing gum in them, but yet they're creating this amazing body of work, right? And they don't care. It's not like, oh, I wish I had this new computer, this new camera. Their mindset is more, this works for me. I like using this beat up camera. It has my mojo in it. And I like using this beat up computer. It has my mojo in it. I know how to get my stuff done. And I don't want you to interrupt my flow with your newfangled stuff. So they're an eddy outside of the river of gear acquisition syndrome.
There's other names for those groups, you know that,
right? I love it though. Well, cool, Chris. You've had enough time. Let's go into the Q&A here and see what we got. Right. So we've got the first one is referencing Troy Miller. Troy, when is your event?
Oh, it's August 11th. Like a week and a half away.
Is it that soon? So I thought this was next year. Are you sure it's a week and a half?
Don't you even do that to me. I just had this hot surge. Yeah.
You're like introducing Frederick Van Johnson. Crickets.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's coming up real quick, August 11th. Yep.
Yeah, and we're looking at planning F64live.com, right?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Stephen Sharf says, did we reach consensus? Yeah, thanks you, Chris. This is a question I was looking for. He said, did we reach consensus on the look question? So is there a consensus? My consensus, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, my consensus was, and I want to, preface this with, we need to have Leica and Fuji people on, hopefully from engineering to help us understand, like, no, we compare this pixel to that pixel, and then we divide it, and then we sprinkle some salt on it, and a little paprika and all this stuff, and now we have the Fuji Look. But barring that, I feel like if you're capturing raw data, you can replicate any look. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I go back to something that Troy said about even that camera sensor and even that raw file, there's still someone that's saying, I want 1 part this and 2 parts that and 1.5 parts this, and I want it in this pattern, repeating this amount of times across an APS-C sensor with this lens, and it's a 24 megapixel sensor, so I've designed my lenses to fit this range, and I'll get sharpness from this area, and this is where it starts to diminish, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so yes and no. I mean, that's really tough. I mean, I guess the question would be, so you have for example, you have an XT100. Why is Acros in the XT2 and the X Pro 2 and the XH1, but not in the Bayer sensor pattern, the Bayer pattern for the XT100?
Yeah.
Why haven't they done that? Is it processing power? Is it this? Is it that? So I think there are differences from one sensor and one camera to the next. But for the most part, if you want to pass a look off, say, of, classic chrome from a Sony, or I want to get a Canon look and I want to, go on EOS, HD or whatever, and get a profile and get the Canon look from a video, an S-Log 2 or 3 file. I guess that depends on how much effort you want to put into your post processing. But yeah, I think you can get close to it.
All right, Troy, what about you, man? Do you have a consensus on?
I do, and my consensus is pudding.
42, right?
No. 42 is an absolute. Pudding, however, everybody likes different pudding. And so it really comes down to the consensus. The consensus has to be, right? It has to be. The consensus is whatever you're using that gets you to get to the flavor that you like, that's the right one.
Yeah. I
agree.
So
we did kind of come to the consensus that chocolate pudding is better than tapioca, but it's because that's what I like. And then what
it's subjective.
So yes.
It's subjective.
It's subjective. Yes.
Absolutely.
There's no absolutes here.
I love it. Yeah, in any of this stuff. That's what makes This Week in Photo so fun, because there is no one right answer to any of this stuff. Even in the gear acquisition syndrome, we do a show on drones. Right. Oh, you should buy this drone over that drone. No one cares. In the end, you're not shooting for other photographers, and you're not shooting for the feature set in that thing that you just bought. You're shooting in service of the art that you're trying to create. Right. And people that are looking at that art unless they're nerdy photographers like we aren't going to reverse engineer it and say, that was this kind of camera or whatever. Right.
No. And to be realistic, nobody else other than other photographers even care what gear you used.
No.
Or what lens you had, or, oh, that lens isn't as sharp as this. They don't care. No. And I was just down at the Laguna Art Festival. I mean, there's art hanging there that's $35,000. And by all intents and purposes, I think 90% of us would look at that and go, what? Mm-hmm. What? That's crap. Yeah. It's out of focus. I can see Maury over here. They don't care. The person that walks up and goes, oh, I love that. That's it. They're going to buy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, subjectivity. All right. The next question is from Ruth Happel. Ruth says, what single feature do you most want Nikon Mirrorless to bring to the table? All right, Nikon shooter. What do you think, Troy? One single feature. Is there a feature that if you walked into your local camera store and they had a display up with all this Nikon stuff on it, what feature would make you just weather an argument with your wife to buy it?
So that's assuming that there's a mirrorless camera sitting there, but let me just flip this around a little bit. Take my D5 and give me a live viewfinder. Done.
Oh, okay. So you want a Nikon camera that does everything a D5 does, but has live view. So live view is what you're missing.
Live view, because mirrorless is always going to have a challenge focusing. So
I wouldn't use that word always.
Well, it does now.
Yeah,
it does now. That's fair to say. I mean, obviously everything's in context.
Right.
So the one feature, I really need it to focus in low light. I mean, I really, really need it to focus in low light. Mm-hmm. And low light isn't fair. It's soft light, soft contrast light. That's what I need.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is Trevor Panaki. Trevor says, quick question. Is everyone on the panel shooting with their dream camera yet, or is tech constantly shifting the goalposts? That's a great question. Yeah, I think we are chasing the horizon, Trevor. That's what's happening.
Hey, when I had my Nikon D3, I'm like, that's it. This camera's going to get me. And then they come out.
This is it. This is all I need.
Oh, look at those! Look at those colors.
Right. Yeah.
I've given up on the one camera thing.
Yeah.
And I feel much more relaxed because like I like my tools. Like Troy was saying, like he has X amount of different types of the same tool, but they all do something different. Like I want to start with great tools that are going to get me great images, but one day I may want to handheld hold my Fuji, so I'm going to pick my X-H1. Or one day I may want to do street, I'm going to pick my X-T2. I want to be a little bit more kind of hidden.
Yep.
So between the tools that I rotate in and out of, my, kind of my garage, my table of tools back there, I get to the things that I want to create, but I've been buying a lot more lighting and things of that nature as of late. Having fun with that.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I'll tell you one of the main reasons why so far to date that I've stuck with one system, and that's Lumix right now, is because I really love the operating system on those cameras. And I have multiple cameras, like I have a G9, I have a GH5 for video, and I have smaller cameras, and they all use the same lens mount. So it's a system. Even if I decide I'm going out, I want to take my little GM5, it's a little tiny camera about this big, I can take that out and put whatever lens I want on it, and the whole system works. And the user interface for me to find things in there, Sony, are you listening? The user interface, it gets out of my way. I know exactly where to find things on this camera versus the top end camera, only with features missing, right? So I'll go in the same menu structure, and I was like, oh, there's all this stuff, but just a bunch of things are missing, that the high-end cameras have that this one doesn't. So I enjoy that. And one of the things that scares me about Sony is giving up that, or even like Chris, you were saying, you're not monogamous when it comes to your camera systems. That's great, but then what I worry about is having to shift my mind into the new operating system from the other one. I'm getting older, and I can't switch that quick now. So I gotta be like, okay, where's the intervalometer now again?
I'm with you because I told I'm gonna get an A7 III. Why are you gonna do that? Why are you gonna have two systems? Well, I decided I wasn't going to make the Sony like the Fuji. It's not. I'm not gonna program the buttons like, ooh, I'm used to this. I decided, okay, here's the Sony. Here's why I bought it. Here's what it's going to do. Here's what I'm going to want to do with that camera. But really, when I want to create something fast, easy, I'm going to go with one of my Fujis. It's simple. I know where everything is. Can the Sony get me an awesome image? Can I work that slider 5 stops and just love whatever comes out of it? Yeah. Because it's the latest, greatest, and Sony makes great sensors.
It's just the familiarity I think I'm talking about. It's just the idea of like if you've got if you're a professional motorcycle rider or a racer and you've got this bike that you've been riding for the last 5 years, you know what it does when it hits a pebble. You're that intimate with it. You can feel it. If I breathe like this when I twist the throttle, it's going to do this, right? All that stuff about the bike. You're intimate with it. If you have 2 bikes, can you be as intimate with both of those bikes, or are you going to have muscle memory that's trying to activate on bike 2 when when it should be activated on bike 1? Troy Miller.
And I know it to be true because I've done some tests, and I have an Xbox and a PlayStation, and I can play equally well on both of them.
Really?
So.
Wait, you said you compete equally well on both the PlayStation and the Xbox?
Yeah, pretty crappy. Yeah.
Oh, good.
But a gamer's just a big controller. It's just buttons, right? You have to learn it. But a good lesson to be learned here is that you do need to learn your equipment intimately. You do need to be able to change things in the dark. You do need to be able to know that if I roll the wheel this way, that's increasing my aperture or decreasing my aperture. It doesn't matter what kind of gear you're on. You do need to be able to do that. You should be able to pre-visualize your image before you take a photo. Doesn't matter what gear you're shooting. You need to know, I'm shooting into the sun and that's white and what's this image going to look like? Yeah. That's just habit. If you never take the thing out of the box and shoot with it, you shouldn't even have it.
That's right.
Go wear it out.
Yeah. It's that intimacy. You remember that movie Full Metal Jacket? You remember that? This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. You can translate that to cameras. This is my Nikon. There are many like it, but this is
mine.
This one is mine.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
guys. We'll leave it at that. We're at the end of another episode of This Week in Photo. We went a little bit long, but this is great. I think we needed to make up for last week's technical difficulties. So I feel like we restored balance to the force with this episode. Troy Miller, if people want to catch up with you, sign up for F64, look at some of your work, whatever, stalk you, where should they go?
F64 is f64live.com. You can always just go check that out there. If you want to stalk me, just look up spicyjello.com or spicyjello on Instagram, and I've got all my links and all my stuff there, so you can track me down.
Awesome.
And I'm on TWiP Pro community, so I'm there too a lot. Yeah, hit me up there.
We hang out there. We party in TWiP Pro all
the
time.
We do.
Awesome. Cool, man. Well, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good having you on. All right. And Christopher Berry, man, where are you at online with people want to catch up with you?
I'm Instagram. It's at Mickman, MIKMAAN. And then Twitter and Facebook, Xman, EKSMAAN. And also in TWiP Pro. I got to be honest, I've been shooting and sharing, and I put a real estate image in there because I'm really trying to do more real estate. That's what I do for my profession mainly. Yep. And I'll tell you what, just one time a few days ago, I feel like I've made a much more sellable product just from being in TWiP Pro and having guys like Troy and you, Frederick, in there to, say, here's another angle, here's this, here's what you should be doing, here's where that part of the market is going. That's freaking helpful. I mean, I want to get better, and I'm getting better. So I appreciate that community a lot, a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that exactly is, that's one of the main reasons that we put it together, is to allow people like us, because the people that are watching this, people that are in the chat room, people that are going to see this later on YouTube or listen to the podcast in their car on their way to work, we are all the same people. We are all not some kumbaya stuff, but we are literally the same kind of people. We like gear, we like software, we like to nerd out, we like to find out the latest stuff, we like to get feedback on our work, and that was the impetus of why TWiP Pro was created, was to create a safe space for us to get together without trolls, without worrying about if I send this message, will anybody see it? Any of that stuff. So it's been surprisingly successful. I'm really, really happy to see the trajectory that it's taken. And thank you both for being in there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right. Well, folks, they're watching this and they're in the chat room. If you want to stay up to date on all things photography, just subscribe to the podcast over at thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe. thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe. That's where you can subscribe to us on whatever platform that you want to consume the audio version of the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, and hit that notification button so that when I publish these live episodes or set them up to go live, you'll get a notification. It'll come in your feed, and you won't have to worry about missing any of this stuff. The main reason that you want to participate in the live is for the chat room, obviously, so you can interact with us and ask questions and all that stuff. And that's it. That's it for this episode of This Week in Photo. It is time to take that lens cap off. Peace.